Hi, I'm Mark with the Watch Society. Rolex is famous for making small, incremental changes between each model. And it's hard to tell the difference until you've seen a lot of generations pass and you can look at them together. So I figured, let's do that. On one side, we have a late 1960s Rolex GMT 1675. And the other side, we have the new Bruce Wayne 126710. Almost 60 years separates these two watches. Both Rolex GMTs, steel bracelets, no different bracelets. And between them, they, from a distance, look pretty close to each other. But when you get up close, you can see where things have changed over 6 decades. So let's take a closer look. The biggest difference between these two is probably the fact that this one got a little bigger. As it aged, gained a little weight. Overall, it's gone from 42 millimeters from the old 39.5 millimeters. When you look at them side by side, you would think this big fat case versus this thinner case, that this one would be a lot thinner. But because that big acrylic crystal versus the flat sapphire, they're actually both 12 millimeters tall. So they're actually the same height, including the sapphire or acrylic, but the case itself, this one's thinner by a few millimeters. Now moving on to the difference between these two. Over here, you have the aluminum bezel. Deep black, these classic 60s numerals. This is part of the fat numerals. So the 8 and the 10, you can see these are a little bit closer together. They're a bit more on the bold side of the font. And you have this skinny arrow up here. Versus if you moved, ahead 60 years of font change and how people look at things differently, we've gone to skinnier numerals, a fatter arrow. They're still spaced out the same because they have to tell this time the same way. And they're generally from the same font family. They've just changed through 6 decades to be a little bit thinner, a little bit more modern that way. Preference of these are probably more of the time numerals of today. If you put these numerals on this watch, it would look out of place. These are classic numerals. They do not look good on a modern watch. They look good on a classic watch. They fit here and they're perfect for the 60s. They're just a little different on the numerals. They're just probably out of place today. The big difference between the aluminum and the ceramic is the ceramic won't scratch. There's a scratch up here just off the 11 o'clock marker that my wonderful wife's cat put into me when it disagreed the fact that it should go into a cat carrier. The watch did protect me from getting scratched up more, but the ceramic would have taken that, brushed it off, and not gotten scratched. It's definitely an improvement, but I kind of like the fact that every time I see that, I know how I got it. I know the story behind it. I like the fact that this watch shows its history, shows where it came from. This will show scratches, just not on the bezel. The ceramic will be very, very hard to scratch. It's possible to crack, then you replace the bezel, but that still takes some work and is a pretty rare thing to actually see. Now moving on to the dial. The late 60s dial is applied tritium lume that over time has aged, it's yellowed. It's this beautiful color that you won't be able to get with modern Luminova. And starting in 1998, that's what everything uses. The Rolex over here has Super Luminova. Like I said, it's been there since 1998. And before that, you have these applied markers. Those applied markers are made of white gold. So are the hands, and it shows where Rolex has come. Over here in the 60s, this was a watch sold in the military PX for a discount. It was worn by pilots, worn by military personnel. It was a tool watch. Over here, the luxury watch. It's a status symbol. But that's the evolution of mechanical watches, not just Rolex, but any mechanical watch. We've gone from a purpose-built tool to a watch that's a luxury. If you want the watch that works the best, get yourself a G-Shock that will update time through the air. They'll be more accurate, it'll take bigger beating and cost you less money. But that's not why we wear them. We wear them because we appreciate the art and the luxury of it. So this represents what watches are today, and this represents what watches were in the late 60s, before the quartz crisis came about. Now, with that 60 years of improvement, there's also a big difference between how they work. On the old model, the hour hand and the GMT hand are linked together. So if you move the crown, they'll move together. They don't move independently. If you want to set a separate time zone, you have to actually move the bezel. On this one, the hour hand actually moves independently of the GMT hand if you want it to, allowing you to not only quickly set the dime, but you can actually use the hour hand, the GMT hand, and the bezel to use 3 different time zones. So it allows for better options while traveling, and it's an easier thing to set. It's a convenience thing that's happened over time and started with the first GMT Master 2. And, which about 20 years after this guy did that come about. So it's been around a while, but this is certainly a better technical watch. Now, when you get to the case, that's one where, honestly, I think that the old one wins. I like the thinner profile of the case. I like the pierced lug. It's easy to change a strap on that. But more than anything, I love these crown guards. These crown guards are thin, pointed. There's an architectural style to that thin point that I really love. It looks good. It looks purpose-built and flowing with the case. There's just a style to it that I really like. And those crown guards change a lot through the years. So this is the version I personally prefer. Now over here, the crown guard is, it's big, it's round, it goes with the case. I like that fine point. I like the little extra flow to it, the style to it. This just feels like it was milled as part of the case, and it's just easier to make than the old one. It does work. With a bigger case, a bigger crown guard is something that probably works better, but I like the smaller case. I think it flows better. Even on my big 8-inch wrist, I think that this smaller case looks better. I wish we would still have this 40mm case or 39.5 with these pointed crown guards and bring in some of the modern elements to it. This case to me is still the best case, and it's very similar to Submariners of the era. Now, where the 1675 falls short is the bracelet. 6 decades have really changed the way we deal with bracelets. This is folded steel. It's just past the rivet time. And this folded steel with hollow links in the center, hollow end links. This is a watch that it was a great bracelet for its day, but that day is 6 decades ago. 60 years have passed, and this just wouldn't pass muster the same way. It's very comfortable. It has held up very well, but it does not belong on a high-end luxury watch that you'd see today that is Rolex. Instead, it's stamped. It has no quick set. You have to move the pin over if you want to change how wide it is. It does have a diver's extension, and people kind of forget it happened or existed back then. And this is even on a GMT watch, so it's the same bracelet from the Submariner. But it's just a bit jangly. It's the hollow end links, the hollow center links that wouldn't fly today. Versus the Jubilee bracelet is all solid links, solid end links. It really feels substantial. There's no give to it. It's built really well to very tight tolerances, and is also incredibly comfortable. There's the quick extension system. There's more brushing, polishing going on in the bracelet. It's overall just more attention paid to it. It's better built to better tolerances. And as much as this bracelet was great in its day, there's nothing about it that holds up to the modern bracelets. It's just 6 decades of technology and how we manufacture. The improvements just means that this bracelet doesn't hold up. But it's great for its day, and it is very comfortable, and it's still good. And like I said, 6 decades later, they're stretching it for sure, but it still holds up well. That's overall the little differences between each one. But what you have in both is a great GMT watch, a travel watch that was built for pilots, specifically Pan Am pilots who asked for it to come about so that they could have a watch that tracked 2 separate time zones. It's not the first one to come out. The Glycine Airman came out, I think 4 years before this. So it wasn't the first GMT out, but it certainly immediately became the most popular. Mainly because those Pan Am pilots were military pilots. They were used to seeing Rolexes in the PX. They were used to seeing Submariners that you could buy at the local military store on base. And they knew it was a good watch. It's where Rolex earned its reputation. A solid built watch that worked for the military and for professionals. So when those military pilots became private pilots after the Korean War, they wanted the same watch. They wanted something that they trusted, which was Rolex. And so Rolex became the pilot's watch. It became just like they had it in the military and the Submariner, they became the watch that the pilots wore. A different version of Rolex watch became the watch the Thunderbirds wore, the famous flying team. But for commercial aviators, this is what they prefer, to be able to track the 2 different time zones that they were flying between, where they were coming from and when they were going to. It was an easy way to tell. This is before we had digital clocks on everything. And that reputation for having a very well-built watch, a very well-built tool watch, earned Rolex's place. So as time went on and they've made the slow improvements and the move from the tool watch to the luxury watch, it's kept the same style. It's kept its design. It can still do what it was meant to do, but now the bracelet is better. The markers are now white gold to add a little luxury feel. The steel has gone from 316 to 904 because, well, it's shinier. People like shiny. And the bezels become ceramic, so it's not going to get scratched like the old aluminum bezels were. That march of time over 6 decades has worked very well for Rolex. They've made a great transition from the tool watch to the luxury watch while still keeping the DNA of the former. So all of those changes added up. I was asked by somebody in the group, which one of these watches do I like better subjectively, and which one objectively is a better watch? And for me, subjectively, I like the old one. But I don't know if that's because that's the one I was introduced to first. This is the watch that introduced me to watches. So it might just be that pull of nostalgia, the where things came from that I appreciate about this watch. That subjectively, I like this one better. I like the 1675. But objectively, the newer watch is a more advanced movement. It's better against shocks, magnetism. It has all the 6 decades of improvements within it. The bracelet is better. You're talking hollow end links versus solid end links. The ceramic doesn't scratch like the aluminum bezel does. So these little things, these technical improvements, the new 126710 is a better watch, objectively. But objectively, an Apple Watch is more accurate than either of these. A G-Shock will take more beating than either of these. Objectively, no mechanical watch should be something we want to wear. It's a subjective thing. It's the romance of it. It's why we love it. And there is no wrong answer. It's purely make sure that which one you like best and which one speaks to you and not some outside influence. So no matter which one speaks to you, enjoy it, wear it, make it part of your story. There is no wrong answer as long as you pick the watch that you like and not as some hype piece out there that a bunch of other people are telling you should like. And with that in mind, which one do you prefer? The old 1675 or the new version? Let me know in the comments. Have a good one.